This morning, Texas Republicans relishing a legal battle on the border.
Republicans have gotten very bloodthirsty when it comes to the issue of immigration and border security.
Did the state guard keep Border Patrol out of a park when migrants were drowning? Congressman Joaquin Castro joins us from D.C. Tuesday could be telling in the Republican race for president. The New Hampshire primary now 48 hours away. So where do donors go now? Republican consultant Matt Mackowiak follows the money. Plus our viral video from Iowa. Why a 12-second clip of voting got so many people talking. And State Rep Carl Sherman on his underdog bid to become the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate this fall.
Quite frankly, I don't like politics. But I love people, and I love policy, and I love the Lord.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Lots happening with politics over the last week, but let's start with the headlines right now. Attorney General Ken Paxton trying to avoid sitting for a deposition by settling that infamous lawsuit with 4 whistleblowers in his office. These were Paxton's top staff, handpicked by him, and they accused the Attorney General of corruption. The legislature last year refused to pay that settlement and impeached Paxton instead. When whistleblowers decided to take Paxton to trial after all last fall, the Attorney General just gave in, telling the court he will not contest it. Still, a deposition is already scheduled for next month, but it's up to the legislature to determine whether to pay anything if there is an eventual judgment. We do know Paxton did pay his attorneys $2 million to defend him at the impeachment trial last year. Now Paxton is looking for political payback. The Attorney General in Beaumont last week campaigning against House Speaker Dade Phelan. Paxton supports a long-shot opponent. Phelan led the impeachment against Paxton over those corruption charges. And Republicans have talked for 4 years now about election integrity and securing the ballot. But watch this video here. A 24-second clip of video that we posted in Iowa last week went viral. It shows Republicans in West Des Moines caucusing and then collecting votes in a paper grocery bag, like a collection plate at church maybe. That clip seen more than 5 million times already, commenters blasting the GOP for not better securing ballots and the integrity of the election there. Let's start this morning, though, with New Hampshire. It could be make or break for Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis this week. Both finished far behind Donald Trump in Iowa last week. So we're following the money right now. Where do the donors go? And what will be the signs to watch for this Tuesday when New Hampshire votes? Questions we put to Matt Mackowiak, a Republican consultant and chair of the Travis County Republican Party. Matt, welcome back to the program. Donald Trump got the bounce in Iowa there. Haley and DeSantis, though, remain in the race. What are you watching for on Tuesday for the New Hampshire primary?
Well, all eyes are on Nikki Haley. I mean, she needs to find a place where she can win, or she can change this race fundamentally. She didn't get the huge boost out of Iowa that she wanted, and she's really put a lot of her cards in the middle of the table, or chips a lot in the middle of the table in New Hampshire with the governor. Fully supporting her and predicting a win, although now he's backtracking, saying maybe she'll finish a strong second. She's got to probably win New Hampshire to have a pathway forward. I think if that doesn't happen, you look at the rest of the map, particularly the next 6 weeks, hard to see a place where she's going to win, including in her home state of South Carolina, where I think Trump is very likely to win. So the reason DeSantis hasn't gotten out yet is that he believes that Haley's going to have to get out first. And so he's got to see if he can survive long enough. That may just be a matter of surviving past Tuesday. Now, what we don't know is how many Democrats and independents are going to cross over in this open primary contest in New Hampshire and perhaps put Nikki over the top.
It's always good to follow the money on these situations. After Iowa, ahead of New Hampshire here, where does the money go from big donors?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the Trump team is putting a lot of pressure on people that haven't gotten on board. I think they have an event coming up in a few weeks in Mar-a-Lago and West Palm Beach that they're kind of saying this is the last chance. So this is one of the problems I think the Haley and DeSantis campaigns are going to have, particularly the DeSantis campaign, is if they can't bring in new money without establishing a pathway to be in the nominee, it's going to be hard for them to continue. Super Tuesday on March 5th has a large number of states, including Texas, all of which are very expensive. March 19th, you have Florida and Ohio. So, these folks are trying to live through New Hampshire, through Nevada, through South Carolina to see if they can get into a head-to-head matchup with Trump. Even still, there's a 90 or 95% chance, I think, at this point that Trump will be the nominee.
Finally, I'm curious about what you think about Democrats announcing President Biden's raised $97 million. That's a pretty big number heading into 2024.
Yeah, this is a problem I think growing for the GOP side is that Biden I think has the largest war chest of any incumbent president at this point, and he's going to be able to raise those resources. Trump has not had great support from large donors in the recent campaign. He's going to have to get that program, his bundling program, going. His small dollar fundraising has been pretty good. Of course, they've been spending a lot of money on lawyers, and those costs are not going away. In fact, if anything, they're going to increase. So the fundraising question and the disadvantage the Trump side may likely have is going to be a big issue.
Matt, thanks for the insight. Appreciate it as always.
Pleasure.
All right, let's bring in the roundtable to talk about the politics of this. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I am Meacher from the Texas Tribune in Austin. And of course, Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Bud, we saw on Friday Tim Scott from South Carolina announced he is now going to endorse Donald Trump. What are you watching for on Tuesday night when New Hampshire goes to the polls?
I think the big thing, I've said all along that Trump is having trouble reaching 50%. It looks like he will reach 50% in New Hampshire. He's becoming the odds-on nominee. I think you see Cruz and Scott piling in. Nikki Haley wanted to tell the people in New Hampshire that she was the only candidate who could beat Joe Biden, but they're starting to think Donald Trump is.
And where do Haley and DeSantis go from here, though?
Yeah, well, Ron DeSantis has already kind of conceded New Hampshire. He's focusing his efforts on South Carolina. So Nikki Haley really needs to show a strong showing in New Hampshire to kind of, change this narrative about Trump. But the numbers really favor Trump. And, with this Scott endorsement, it just also kind of changes the narrative for Haley in her home state.
Bernadine, what are you watching for?
Nikki Haley. I think everyone will be watching to see how well she does, because at this point, Trump is probably going to be the nominee. But I think that the eyes will be on who will be a challenge. And at this point, Nikki Haley, she's either going to stay in or come out.
Is there a threshold she has to meet, do you think?
I think she just needs to come in second. I don't think even she thinks she's going to come in first. No. But if she could just come in second.
And polls show Trump is ahead, and the polls have been right so far, at least in Iowa.
Yeah.
All right, guys, a lot more coming up here in just a moment. Straight ahead here on the program, Congressman Joaquin Castro calls Texas Republicans bloodthirsty in their latest legal showdown on the border. And the underdog Democrat in the race for U.S. Senate, where Carl Sherman says he sees a path to victory. Both men up next on Inside Texas Politics. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Republicans are relishing this latest legal showdown on the Texas-Mexico border. At issue right now is whether the state can keep Border Patrol off a park along the Rio Grande. 3 migrants died there last week, near there. Congressman Joaquin Castro blasting the GOP with strong words this morning on this latest political flashpoint. Castro, of course, is a Democrat who represents parts of San Antonio. Congressman, welcome back to the program. The Department of Homeland Security is threatening to take legal action against the state of Texas, or appropriate action is what it says, after this incident in Eagle Pass. What do you expect that is going to mean?
I expect that the federal government will file suit to stop Greg Abbott and Operation Lone Star from interfering with federal duties. At this point, Jason, the governor's bragging about blocking the federal government and Border Patrol from doing its job. And in the meantime, they're not taking on any other duties related to border security or immigration in terms of processing people or anything like that. So they're just interfering with the duties of the federal government. And it's making the situation less safe and worse.
Congressman, what was your first reaction when you heard the news about what's happening at Shelby Park there in Eagle Pass?
I mean, I wasn't shocked because I know that Greg Abbott has made this his number one boogeyman issue. I mean, he uses migrants at this point as political scarecrows to try to scare everybody else. And so I wasn't surprised about that, but it did shock the conscience when you talk about Texas National Guard or DPS basically preventing CBP from rescuing a mom and 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old kid who drowned. I'll say this, Republicans have gotten very bloodthirsty when it comes to the issue of immigration and border security.
Of course, Republicans and Governor Abbott say that the president can do more just with the stroke of a pen and executive orders. Do you think he's doing enough?
I think that the Congress needs to step up and do its job. And I also think that the governor could be more helpful in terms of providing money to places like Eagle Pass, Del Rio, San Antonio, Laredo, El Paso, because of what they are dealing with this surge of migrants. The governor has hardly lifted a finger in terms of helping these communities with financial resources. So yeah, I think the president from the executive office should do everything he can through executive order, but that doesn't relieve the Congress from doing its job, and it certainly doesn't relieve the governor of the state of Texas from helping his cities.
Last question I want to ask you about 2024, the nomination process for president, obviously underway now with Iowa last week. I'm just curious what you think that President Biden's chances are as we go into this. A lot of talk about his age on one side, but then the other side, we see that he's raised $96 million, a lot of money out of the gate to start the year with.
I still believe that President Biden can get reelected and will get reelected, whether his opponent is Donald Trump or Nikki Haley or somebody else. I think the president, when he has an opportunity to really spend some of those funds to remind Americans about how he has helped the country bounce back from the start, which was a pandemic, how we have the strongest economy that we've had in decades, and how he's proposed real solutions on the border and in other areas, and each time has been rebuffed by a Republican Congress that really is in chaos. You saw them dethrone Speaker McCarthy. There's talk by their extreme members of taking out Speaker Johnson now. So this is a president who has been able to do these things, pass major legislation or shepherd it through Congress without much help from the Republican Party.
Congressman, we always appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
Good to be with you.
The top three Democrats wanting to run for U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz this fall are all walking away from safe political seats. Colin Allred leaving Congress, Roland Gutierrez leaving the state Senate, and Carl Sherman leaving the Texas House of Representatives. But Sherman is the underdog in this race, a role he told us he does not mind playing. Representative, there are 9 candidates in this race for U.S. Senate on the Democratic side. How are you going to distinguish yourself from others?
Well, I think, and first of all, thank you for having me on the show this morning. I think that we've got some really good candidates in this race, and any primary that has formidable opponents is going to be the result of having a better candidate when we get to the general election.
Well, Colin Allred announced first he has the most money, obviously. Roland Gutierrez, another high-profile candidate from the state Senate here in Texas. Where do you see a path to victory, considering those are two of your formidable candidates?
Yeah, first, I want to be very clear. I was last to announce. And for me, this was about praying about this and meditating, talking with my family about this, and I wasn't in a rush to do it because the state of politics is in a broken condition. And I believe that our democracy being at the threat of demise that we're at with authoritarianism going across the globe, it's important to have a candidate who's not from Washington, who's not from Austin, but someone from here, someone who's managed a small town, Ferris, or lived in a small town, worked in a small town, managed that small town, and pastored the small town. That's the candidate that I am, and I believe Texans want someone who is willing to fight for them and understands their issues.
Can you do this, though, without the money that Allred and Gutierrez have?
We'll see. We've had candidates in the past, by the grace of God, who have been outraised. And Washington has someone that they send, or Austin, and the people choose. And so I'm real encouraged by the folks that I meet across this great state. They want someone who's going to fight for their interest, and I'm up for the fight.
Why give up a safe seat in the Texas House of Representatives?
Well, it's not about having a safe seat. Quite frankly, I don't like politics, but I love people, and I love policy, and I love the Lord. And I believe that it's time that we have someone at the U.S. Senate level who is concerned about the people. You see, for me, for me, this is about taking on the issues that matter to the people. And so I love policy and I love people, and to me, Jason, it's about drafting policy, whether it be ordinances for the cities as a former mayor or legislation as a lawmaker. It's about shaping policy that comports to humanity, that represents the people that are not allowed into the room, much less a seat at the table. And so that's why, that's why I'm running, and I'm excited about being Texans' new U.S. Senator.
But there are already other Democrats in this race. You already had a safe seat. Why not sit there, get things done on that level, and then wait for an easier opening when you might not have as much Democratic challenge?
Every assignment that I've been given in regards to politics, I've always been the underdog, always. When I make my announcement, usually I'm the last because I'm praying about it and meditating on it. So to me, it's not about a safe seat. It's about the fact that our democracy is not safe right now. And we need someone who is willing to fight for the people, about the issues that matter to them, about teacher pay, about making sure that our public schools are supported. That's why, I'm running, and it's not about me as a safe position.
Representative, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Jason.
When we come back here, the Department of Justice has more than 200 recommendations for Texas after that massive law enforcement failure in Uvalde. We're going to look at the politics of that coming up next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
All right, back now with the Roundtable. Let's bring back Bud, Ian, and Bernadine to talk about the politics of the day here. And Bud, let's start with the U.S. Department of Justice putting that report out a few days ago about the Uvalde situation. This was an analysis. It was not accountability here. We knew some of this stuff. We did not know other elements of it. How much does this change things for DPS, for Governor Abbott, the politics?
Well, of course, just a blistering report, and they're able to throw it out and say, well, that's just the feds. But, what's happened here once again is just the embarrassment to the police, the Department of Public Safety, the troopers, the people who was spelled out the first day what heroes they were, and then had to start backtracking from 2 days later. KVU spelled it out very well in a lot of series. When you see that commander on video saying, you don't want to go in there, it just, you realize what happened.
KVU, of course, are stationed in Austin. Ian, it was Don McLaughlin, a Republican who is the former mayor of Uvalde, who asked the DOJ to come in here. What's your reaction to what you saw?
I mean, some of it kind of reiterated the report of a lot of what has been reported, but also what it just really was a stinging, just kind of evaluation of just the lack of law enforcement coordination, the lack of active shooter training, and really those kind of calls too. And you look at it from the aspect of the families of relatives, and they are still, they welcomed the report because they thought it brought a new layer of transparency, but they still want their focus was on criminal charges against some of these officers.
And Bernadine, the DOJ says it had, 200 and something recommendations in there for law enforcement. Governor Abbott said on Thursday, I believe, that the state's already implemented some of this here. Mm-hmm. Is anything really going to change, though, from these findings? Because we have not heard from the Uvalde DA. We have not heard from DPS on their final report yet.
You know what? Our state leaders moved away from this issue months and months ago. And a lot of it we did know. But I think that what was even more interesting is the top Republican leaders who did respond, they didn't actually question what was in it. They were like, okay, we'll do better. We acknowledge that some of the things that we should have done, and because they understand it's not a positive for them. But I don't think that you're going to see any changes because they've moved past it. They've moved on.
Speaking of law enforcement, Bud, let's talk about Ken Paxton. He's out on the political trail right now. He was in Beaumont last week campaigning against Dade Phelan, going for that political revenge here. He's trying to get that payback. Is he going to be successful anywhere?
I think that the whistleblowers are going to keep him in court and keep him busy for a while. He's been called back for depositions. I think that they are going to keep him tied up. They want Brent Webster. They want Michelle Smith. They want the AG's staff to come and give testimony. This is testimony that was never heard during the removal trial. This is something we've never actually heard from General Paxton.
And Ian, the Attorney General, has been trying to stay out of court, stay away from the, raising his right hand and taking that oath and giving sworn testimony. Do you think we're really going to see that?
Well, it remains to be seen. As Bud said, the whistleblowers are saying this is not, the attorneys for the whistleblowers are saying this is not over. They don't see that this being done and settled, despite what Paxton said in his announcement this week. Of course, this announcement from Paxton comes, after a ruling went against him about being forced to testify. So it's clearly not over, but, if it's up to the whistleblower's attorney, Paxton will be taking that, be testifying at some point.
Bernadine, I asked that question to Ian. You were here shaking your head.
I know it because, as Ian said, it remains to be seen. If it's left up to the courts, he's going to go in. He's not going to win. But if it's left up to Paxton, it's amazing at the different things that he's doing to keep out of court, to keep from going, having to raise up his hand and say, "I swear to this." But I'm waiting to see what else Paxton has up his sleeve, because he's determined not to go into court.
How likely is that, Bud? How likely is a deposition from him? Because they could ask him anything under oath.
They could ask him anything. Of course, it needs to be relevant. But they can keep him for a long time. They have him for all day, so they can keep him for all day. What it also does, it keeps him from going out and campaigning. He was in Beaumont. He was in North Richland Hills. He's going out in all these primary races supporting candidates. And taking depositions keeps him off the trail for another day.
And
That's true.
Same with former President Trump as well. Bud, I am Bernadine. Thanks so much. Appreciate the insight. Always appreciate you watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics. Hope you can join us then. Take care.